My Little Pony is a popular media franchise and recognizable toy line developed by American toy company Hasbro. In 1981, My Pretty Pony was introduced by Hasbro, a pony that was larger and less stylized than the eventual release of the My Little Pony franchise. Due to the unsuccessful toy line, Hasbro decided to release My Little Pony in the following year by introducing 6 smaller and colorful versions of the toy in 1982. This decision led it to becoming one of Hasbro's biggest brands for the next few decades. Over the years, MLP has been revamped 5 times with different iterations or reboots. This is referred to as a generation. Hasbro reboots it every 10 years or so. Collectors classified the different iterations of MLP by separating them into generations. It's more of a fan-made term to use whenever a generation ends and another one begins. The introduction or alteration of a toy design is what establishes a new gen. Generation 1 lasted from 1982 to 1992 in the United States, but was marketed internationally until 1995. The variety of different colored horses, unicorns, and pegasi played a part in why G1 was so sought after. Generation 2 was during the late 90s, while also being the shortest of the generations, only lasting for 2 years. The toy line was not as successful as Gen 1, so it never got a series. However, the art style was different compared to the previous one, and the ponies were made taller and leaner. Despite it lacking in America, it was quite popular in Europe, and people still collect toys of this generation. Generation 3 started in 2003. It's a generation that most people would easily recognize. Compared to the previous 2 generations, Gen 3 was targeted at a younger audience. The toy line was pretty simple and less complex to get out. It featured the core 7 consisting of Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, Cheerly, Tula Rula, Sweetie Belle, Scootaloo, and Star Song. MLP had a very active toy collecting community prior to G4, not pop culture icons, but still successful in toy line sales in the US, Canada, and certain parts of the EU and the UK. Gen 3 was fairly popular considering how long it lasted, but it was not as popular as G4 became. Call it the cherry bomb to the eventual release of Flower Boy. That's for my hip hop fans out there. Generation 4 started in 2010. This is when Lauren Faust, famously known for her previous works like Foster Home for Imaginary Friends and the Powerpuff Girls, will release My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. The main characters of the show are Applejack, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, and Twilight Sparkle. Being the main 6 of the TV show, but also the core characters for the toy line, each figure has seen multiple releases, appearing in various molds and configurations and identical re-releases in several waves. In later years, secondary characters became so popular from the TV series that they were incorporated into the toy line. What I'm about to say, you can technically call this G4.5. 2013 marks the spin-off for Equestria Girls, revolving around an alternate world where the characters of Friendship is Magic appear as humans with a few pony-like features. The majority of merchandise consisted of humanoid dolls based on the characters of the films, the main 6 secondary characters and antagonists with some fashion accessories. Everything in Gen 4 was selling like hotcakes. A motherfucker wouldn't be home to feed their dog for a chance to get some collectibles by the release of a new generation of toys. It wasn't because of the characters being there to sell toys. G4 had actual character development, world building, a cute and colorful show that had a good moral grounding behind it, especially being released in 2010 that marks a significant era for television animation. That's what it made it interesting. It was good. I could bring up Gen 5, but it's not important with this commotion. With this newfound success, the popularity kept increasing, many eagerly waited for merchandise releases, and people started to join in the fandom more. Everyone was happy, but blissfully unaware of what's yet to come, not realizing a storm came in, and nobody was ready to weather it. Enter the bronies. The fandom was smaller or at least underground. Young girls made up the target demographic with a few young boys or adult collectors here and there. Although the original toy franchise has always targeted to little girls as its audience, it has attracted the interest of many teens and adults, mostly men, who call themselves bronies. While internet usage was very common in the 2000s, it wasn't until in the early 2010s that social media was starting to get big that more people came into the picture. There are many different entries for the term brony. The simplest description of the term is a male fan of the series. Originally, the term was created to refer to male fans of the show. Females who joined the fandom felt they were a part of the same group, so they just used it. Eventually, they created a term called Pegasister to differentiate between the two. The term was coined on 4chan after the pilot episode of the show aired on the Hub network. On 4chan cartoons and random boards, the bronies' presence grew rapidly in the following months of 2010 and early 2011. I've heard from different people that it started off as a meme, then it unironically became a term, and and community for them. I was 11 when this happened, too busy putting metal Beyblades in a sock trying to fight kids with it, so I wouldn't know. 4chan had a board called Toy, a board focused on toy collecting. The lack of merchandise at the start of Friendship Magic led to a popularity boost that led to finding toys to be quite hard to find, so people just decided to post pictures that they managed to find both in and out of the box. This is what was considered to be regular tradition. Then users decided to get themselves into a sticky situation. I promise you that was not on purpose. Would anyone like to know what hot gluing is? You're probably thinking using a regular hot glue gun with, glue. Well, not exactly. In 2005, a thread on the Hogfire forums contained several photographs with comments on how the fluid in the images resembled glue rather than semen. I would show you guys this, but there's a new domain. Like, this shit is just gone, but I can still give context with this next part. In 2007, a Japanese blog called Tiende began posting a series of photographs of figurines covered in condensed milk so it would appear that somebody busted a nut on it. Over the next couple of years, the act grew with subreddits like r/coming-on-figurines was created. You can see that it was a joke, haha funny, until it wasn't. Hot gluing is when a man ejaculates on a piece of merchandise and posts photographs to share online. Not only is this a very obscure fetish, some might think of it as a joke, this can also be a way to provoke people. Let's say there was a limited edition Lil Wayne figurine made years ago. No one has it but me. It's worth like what? Throwing an estimate of 500k? Me being a dickhead, I felt like making people sad, so I did the deed and posted it online. I had a goal in mind. Not only to create rage, but show the lack of empathy and bitches in my life. The My Little Pony toy collecting community was in shambles, and just like a black man ignoring the beeps on his smoke alarm, it became an initiation rite for all the new toys that surfaced. I'm literally the color of Michael B. Jordan. I can say this. As years go by, new merchandise that were released to the public became victims of hot gluing threads on 4chan. Here's a question. What do you think happens when someone is searching for a picture of a pony or some type of merchandise on the internet? You get images of said merchandise hot glued like a glazed donut. Fun fact, this little fetish fiasco was the prequel that would later become the stepping stone for the infamous Rainbow Dash jar experiment, which to this day is still one of the biggest brony depravities on the internet. At least if you're outside of the community, then you are safe. So how does this story end? Well, many collectors decided not to collect merchandise from G4 because they didn't want to subject themselves to those photos and did not want anything that may have been used. Collectors were mainly interested in obtaining merchandise from the previous generations and staying away from that side of the community that is Gen 4 heavy induced. Nowadays, people are just collecting. Anyone in the past either retired from toy collecting or moved away from the fandom. I'm not fully sure. What I do know is G4 ended, G5 got cancelled, Hasbro makes trash products. It's 2025 and there's still a toy collecting community for My Little Pony. The only good news that came out of this was knowing anyone who did not join the community around that time did not have to witness what was going on at the time. Most of the new collectors are people who joined at least around 2015 or later. The reputation of bronies was already destroyed over the many counts of problems within the fandom over the decade because a lot of people are problematic, especially being a safe space for a certain type of person to creep on others. Yeah, you don't need me to say it. I would love to talk more about this incident, but unfortunately for me, I ran into two problems when making this video. The first problem was finding older collectors. Before making this video, I wanted to find and interview toy collectors who experienced stumbling upon this depravity that was going on because an inside perspective would have been really nice to hear. I checked forums, attempted to get into contact with people, and got nothing. The only collectors I did get into contact with were all new, so they all had no idea this was happening in the background. The second problem comes from not finding enough people to bring this up. Again, the newer collectors got into MLP during Gen 4, but this was like not too long ago. It really felt like teaching a generation about old computers having a disc port to put CDs in. So yeah, that's that. To anyone that has gone this far and has experienced anything that I said in this video, feel free to share. I'd like to hear your experience on the matter. If there's one thing that I'd like to say to end this, it's to say, if someone asks you if you need glue, make sure you tell them you only use Elmer's. Make sure that fat ass cow is up there.